Hi, it's Rich Tehrani with TMCnet. We are in Silicon Valley right now for our Editors Day 2016. Jason Rose is with us. He's with Gigya. Jason, welcome to the show.
Great, thanks, Rich.
So for those people who may not be familiar with your company, tell us a little bit about what you do.
Sure. So we do something called customer identity management. And again, we think about identity and you're like, I've got a driver's license. Rich, I can see you have an identity. But when you go online, the concept of identity changes. Sometimes your iPhone, sometimes your desktop and your laptop. So really, a company like Gigya, where we do customer identity management, really takes all of those pieces of information about you, brings it all into a single profile, and then allows companies to store that in one place and even present it back to you so you can understand what information we have about you to create a trusted relationship.
And so what is it about what you do that makes it different than a company being able to track this information on its own?
Yeah, really great question. So really our whole mission is to move people from unknown site visitors to known registered users, right? So the relationship online usually starts anonymous. You don't want people to know. And then in fact, when I look at a briefcase online and it follows me to the next 5 websites, it's a little bit creepy, right? Like, why is that happening? So really what we do differently is we really start to build a known identity with you by getting you to register and log in and volunteer your information in a transparent two-way transaction as opposed to the mysterious just following you around the internet.
And even worse is when you go to the first website and buy the briefcase, and it keeps following you. You're like, please, I give up.
Yeah,
I bought
absolutely.
it. I'm not going to buy another one. I bought it. Sorry,
absolutely.
I just added that in. But okay, so very interesting. So you work with companies so that their customers are more comfortable with the two-way information sharing, and so it's not kind of surreptitious, and it's kind of in the sunlight, and it's a happy relationship.
That's right, and it really goes two ways, right? So really, I like to say with great power comes great responsibility, right? So really that customer information is a responsibility of the company that collects it, and now with all the privacy and regulatory requirements to provide transparency to customers, really our solution plays that bridge of, now that we know so much about you, we can now provide you the privacy and transparency that you require to feel comfortable about how that data is being used by the brands with which you interact with.
So can you give us some real world examples of how you've helped customers help their customers?
Yeah, sure. So a great example is News Life Media, for example. So as you register into their system, they can provide surveys about what your preferences are, what you like, and then they are able on their properties to provide a more personalized experience, better articles, better content. And then from an advertiser perspective, which is where News Life makes a lot of their revenue from, they're able then to use that information to provide custom segments to their advertisers that says, you're going to get men between the age of 30 and 40 in this region with this income bracket, and they're willing to pay a premium for that. So the company, in this case, News Life Media, gets the benefit of more information, the customer gets a better experience, and the advertiser gets a better demographic audience that's probably going to respond better to the content being served up.
Oh, so that's really a win-win.
It really is a win-win-win for the brand, for the advertiser, and for the consumer ultimately.
Any other examples?
Yeah, sure. So I think an interesting one is in the consumer packaged goods industry, which typically you think of going to the store and interacting with like Nestle products and things like that. Nestle is a customer, and they are trying to build more and more relationships with customers. If you think about a company like Nestle, they have over 1,500 different brands that they're trying to manage. So wouldn't it be nice to know that Jason is a Nespresso fan, which I am. It's great coffee, and also has a requirement for fresh water. So the pure water division of Nestle would like to know that. So having that single unified customer profile will help Nestle provide a better experience to me as a consumer, understand my preferences, maybe even help me order better capsules, and potentially become a customer of pure water as well, all direct to the consumer as opposed to going through the retail branches. So we're seeing this as a major trend both in consumer packaged goods. We see retailers moving the same direction. Travel and leisure, media and entertainment are all really trying to build that direct relationship with the customer, and that customer identity management solution really helps them understand and build that understanding of who their customer base is.
So the kind of customer that would reach out to you from a title perspective, I imagine, would be CEO, Chief Customer Officer, CMO, like those kinds of titles, Chief Service Officer, things like where you're servicing customers chief customer officer, like that kind
Sure,
of thing,
chief
right?
digital officer, right? So somebody that's really involved in that, I'll call it customer journey. So how do I get that first website visitor to go from that unknown anonymous state into a known loyal customer?
So everything is digital transformation now, really, it sounds like. Is this also digital transformation? Not to make light of it or to make it less important, but it just seems like everything right now, and it's true, it's happening, right? I mean, we're seeing cars are going to self-driving. I mean, every technology that or everything that we've seen is going through some kind of transformation, and this as well, really, relationships with customers.
Well, and this is core to that, right? It's who are you as a person in that digital world, right? And really, that's what the customer identity is all about, is taking your real-world persona, as it were, and turning it into a digital persona that's more than just a random iPhone or a random IP address coming to a website. It's a real person with these attributes, with these interests that you want to give the best possible service to.
So if we can encapsulate this for the people out there that may be interested in buying, we're using your targeting technology, which is somewhat transparent to the end user, to enable companies to build better profiles so that they can service those companies or service the customers in a more effective fashion, allowing them to generate more revenue from the same number of customers by more effectively communicating with them, while customers are increasing their level of satisfaction because they're getting the right information, and in some cases where a media company is involved, a sponsor or advertiser also has a better targeted audience. So we're kind of, depending on the different groups, and in some cases you probably, if I'm not mistaken, you can also allow any large multinational to become almost a media company as well, because now they could target with partners to be able to say, so the Nestle example, the Nespresso, for example, if they know that certain people really like the foamed milk, and they don't sell milk, they could have a sponsor of the milk for those people, say, oh, by the way, you should get Parmalat milk because it really foams nicely inside of our Nespresso, and boom, so now they're generating revenue with a partnership. And so.
Absolutely, and the customer's getting a better experience to boot. And it's all a trusted, two-way, transparent relationship. And by the way, with some of the privacy regulations coming into effect, this is actually becoming a mandate. If you think about companies, oftentimes that customer information is scattered across hundreds of different systems.
Sure.
So how do you provide that single, transparent view back to someone that says, this is the information we have, is it accurate? You can edit it, you can change it, you can update it. Really, you need this centralized concept of a customer identity, which Gigya provides.
So then the only other question they have is from a competitive standpoint, because the marketing automation vendors to some degree do some of this, and then you're doing this so you're almost like you have a core competency and a piece of marketing automation. Is that a good way of saying it?
Well, so we have the identity piece, and then we would provide that identity back to, say, a Marketo or an Eloqua to say, I'm Jason.
But in some cases, they'll do some of that, right? If you put a cookie and a thing, and you have a form, you're kind of like, they've done a piece of it.
They've done a piece of it. That's right. They're one of the 400 systems that now have a piece of your information. We would become the central repository, and then feed your marketing automation, your CRM, your customer support system.
Does your repository reach out to centralized databases as well to pull in information?
It does.
Okay, so that's,
we have something called the identity exchange, whereby we
so
can
that's important too.
Absolutely, yes, because you want to use that that knowledge of the customer, that relationship, throughout that journey, from not only the buying cycle, but also in the support and service and follow-up and everything else. So if you think about marketing automation being your newsletters and your engagement technology, but then when you call in to make an order to the call center, you want to make sure that same information is shared. Or if I file a complaint online about a product being defective and I want to return it, you want to know who that customer is across the entire cycle.
So what do we miss, if anything?
I think the big thing here is something called the General Data Protection Regulation, which is a new EU regulation around data privacy that mandates this transparency of a customer profile back to the end customer for every company that has customers in Europe. This is a big deal, and I think most companies are ill-prepared right now for that.
Sounds like when the Canadian government came up with their anti-spam regulations.
CASL, yeah, their Canadian anti-spam regulations.
But this is a lot bigger. It's a much bigger market.
Much bigger market, much more far-reaching in terms of the data implications, and something that's being phased in between now and May 25th, 2018. So if you're not familiar with GDPR and you have customers in Europe, you should read up very quickly.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time.
Great, Rich.
This
My
was great.
pleasure. Yeah, great. Thank you.